Hello, hello. I was in the midst of working on a project for my art sisters for January, and I looked up and I had everything ready, but I looked up, I was like, oh my goodness, it's time to start. It's time to play. How are you today on this Tuesday? Welcome, and I'm glad you're here. This is the demonstration I want to share with you. I handed this out to the group that signed up for the Advent for this month. And this is one of the templates that I sent out this past week in week two's Advent. So I thought I'm going to paint this and then it will make a great demonstration to be able to watch. The neat thing about this is as I was creating this, I thought to myself, I really wanted to do something that also not just did the image signified a meaning, but also the colors. And of course, we always, when we see Mary, we see her in blue. Have you ever wondered why that is? Why does Mary always in blue? Well, let me look up here really quick and see if I can find some of the meanings. And then this is some of the meanings of what I use, why I chose these. All right. As I was creating this, I thought about the brown, and Mary represents or is for Christ, uh, the mortal, and then God the Father is his father. And so brown represents humility, the earth. Let's see if I can get this bigger because my eyes have to see it. There we go. And humanity's beginning from dust. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? So I thought that's perfect. The blue symbolizes heaven, divinity, God's presence, royalty, and covenant. That's perfect too. And then I chose to do the little baby in purple with some of the blue, reflects the royalty, the power, and divine authority. And the gold that I used here for the halo speaks of God's divine nature, purity, righteousness, and glory. So that's what I had in mind as I was creating this. I wanted to use the colors around it, not just the blue, because I knew that that was pretty typical to signify Mary, but I wanted to add some others that I thought would also represent that wonderfully. So let's go ahead and start. And welcome. We've got a few here. I'm glad you're here. All right, let me switch over. There we go. Can you see that? Can you see that? Let's start with this, and I'm going to walk you through this. First, what I did is this is a 6x8 piece of watercolor paper. I always tape it down typically, just so that it keeps it from the curling and the bending that happens with watercolor. I then went ahead and transferred the template that I gave to the members onto the paper. So if you're not part of that quite yet, and you thought, well, I'd really like to do that, then go over to myartsisters.com, go up into the, I believe if I put it up into the Grow Joy, where that particular journaling is, and you can register in that for that there. You also might look go to my website, kathyfreemanart.com, and at the top there, it's got a little place for you to register, and it gets you connected in so that you will receive the emails as they go out. All right, so let's just start this. She's been transferred on, and what I'm doing is I decided to go ahead, and I usually will work with the larger areas just to kind of get my mind focused in on what I'm doing and to be able to just relax, because so many times don't you find when you start a project, it's usually you're busy with everything else and you're coming in from all of the distractions of the day, and you just need a moment to kind of connect in with what you're doing and to relax. And so I chose to do the background first, and I know I wanted it to be dark, and it actually could be darker. I could go back in if I wanted to and do another layer. It's all about the layering, isn't it, with watercolors, to get it to create those different dimensions. So I put that in, and I used a dark blue that I have in my palette. If you're doing this with acrylics, I would choose something like Midnight Blue. I've seen that name. Just something that'll give you that dark color. And of course, as it dries lighter. And so I will end up putting a couple of layers over this. Welcome, we've got some more. Go ahead and say hello and just tell me where you're from. So it's always fun to connect and see what everyone is up to today. Thank you for the thumbs up. I think it's Renee. Thank you so much for that. All right, the other thing I wanted to do with this is I wanted to create a gradation, which means I wanted it to be darker at the top and as it progressed downward, lighter. And so rather than just making sure that I, filled the whole thing up, I worked primarily up here and then kept bringing the color down. And that's what you'll notice here is I'm always starting at the top because I'm wanting the top to be the darkest and then move down as it goes. And I've sped this up a little bit just so it's not slow and boring for you, but take your time when you're doing it. And just relax and let your mind kind of focus in on what colors you're putting down and the application of what you're doing. All right, we're moving it on down. And I'm still keeping the bottom light, putting a little bit of darkness like the shadow underneath. But I'm wanting to keep that gradation of it's going from light to dark. The next thing I'm going to do is start working on her body itself. And I start with a very pale blue so that it has that underlayer of blue, but then I come back in and I add the brown on top of that. Her veil. And I'm just getting my base layer on right now. Coming back over that veil, darkening it. Another layer. And now we're going to add the brown. And remember, as I said that, the brown, I don't know that you would typically see a Mary with a brown on her clothing, on her dress, but I wanted it, like I said, to symbolically represent that earthly part of her. That humility and the earth. And that's why I chose that. When you're doing the skin color, I just happen to have a couple of different shades in here of neutrals, and you can mix these in depending on what color, how you want the skin to go. And apply that. And now we're going in and adding the purple. And I'm using a pretty narrow round tip. It's got a great point to it. So it's probably larger than I would typically use. It's a number 4, but it's got this wonderful tip on it. So it makes it easy to do little tiny corners in that. Now that I've let that veil dry a little, we're going to go back and put the second layer on. Hi, Joni. I'm glad you're here. And add that second layer to it. I turned it upside down so that I would focus more on the shape. That's a great technique to do when you're painting something so that you get your mind off of the object that you're painting and more onto the shape. Now I have a watercolor that is a gold. It's a little bit more yellow, but this would be beautiful if you had a metallic paint itself. Even though this shows up a little metallic in my watercolors, I think I will go back and eventually add a metallic gold over the top of this, just a little bit to give it that more shimmer to it. If you had a gold, well, like here, I have this gold marker. You could add that to it. While that's painting, I'm going to actually go ahead and do that with this. Add that little halo around it. Now, I dried this and came back in with, this is a watercolor pencil to create a little bit of a shadow and to get it to stand out. So I applied that in a couple locations. Now I peel this off, but after I looked at it and it completely dried for a couple of hours, I came back and I'm going to show you the second part of what I did. I decided to add more colors because I wanted more contrast to it. I wanted, it was very pale and it was soft. It was beautiful, but I just wanted to play with it a little bit more. And so I added a few more layers on here to create that depth and some of the contrast. So don't be afraid to go back in after you've finished with something and just play with it if you want to. If you're not completely satisfied with it, we added our little star and finished that up. All right, so that is the project that I'm going to share with you today for your journals. And I'm actually going back in. I've used this marker. I have applied a little bit of this gold around here. I'm going to do a little bit on the baby's halo. And I haven't used this marker in forever. But that will give it that gold metallic. Add that into it. I'll do a little more on hers. And that's our project for today. So thank you for popping in here and watching it. And I hope you're working on your art journals and creating your projects. You have a wonderful week. And I will see you again back here next Tuesday. See you later.